Aloha mai kako. You are watching Hawaii Political Reporter.
Aloha, and thank you for watching Hawaii Political Reporter. We greatly appreciate it, and we appreciate your comments, and we appreciate your ideas for stories, and we're going to be reading and dealing with some of those tonight, and we hope we're able to be informative. So we're going to be going over a few things, primarily local, some state, and also national. And as promised from last week, we'll be going over some of the Libertarian victories that changed results for the Republicans, which I would at this point say thank God. It's well needed. Some people need to wake up, and not for the obvious reasons, but for many more than a lot of people even know. And I'd also like to go over a little bit on economics and HIAC, which we'll start off with in a moment, but we'll be putting the Road to Serfdom off till next week probably. I'm working on that. And Dorian Electra will have, she's made some great music videos, and we'll have some interview with her and some of her music videos on about that. Okay, so The Road to Serfdom by F.A. Hayek. Fantastic book written in the 40s, I believe, early 40s. And the main message of this book is that central planning does not work. And, you know, this is basically based on the collectivist approach. Now, many people, you know, break it down into socialism and fascism and communism, but really it's just one of the ISMs, isms. And essentially what happens, if any person on earth thinks they're wise enough to go ahead and predict the future, predict everything as it's going to happen, and try to bring everything down in a line that they are going to procure superior results, I think they're quite delusional and have, you know, visions of playing God. It's not realistic. Now, having said that, of course, there's some structure that needs to be employed. What I'd like to say on this, and we're going to get off this shortly, is to please think of basically a hierarchical situation versus a spider web. The web, the World Wide Web, is an example of obviously a spider web, and it works very well. One part goes out, another, you know, functions. The whole is not distributed. So ironically, these collectivists with their top-heavy situation going down does not work well under duress and under stress, and that's what we're going to be finding out, I think, all too shortly in this country. So Hayek's Road to Serfdom is about the challenges and basically the horrible things that actually happen to individuals as the state takes more and more control. It was actually written to reflect what happened with Hitler, as he was a socialist. A lot of people fail to remember that. He was a socialist. And then there was Mussolini, who was a fascist. And I believe right now that this current U.S. administration is essentially a fascist organization, or, you know, so a lot of people say Marxist. I don't know if I'd say that. And by the way, just for one side note, you know, we hear a lot of things, Marx is evil, Marx is evil. I personally think he was, in result, evil. And because, I mean, what he's trying to do and the way they're advocating is really not, you know, kind and loving at all. But he was a very intelligent man, and if you look at how he broke things down in his economics, it is worth studying, not only to quote-unquote know your enemy, but also because the work itself was brilliant and a good analysis. But again, I think the conclusions are the problem. So let's move on to what I believe are local issues, or certainly they will impact us locally. So Edmund has asked me, or mentioned, you know, we were replying some emails, and he said, what is the PLDC? And, you know, this PLDC, a lot of us know about it, and some don't. I mean, we have lives and we're busy, and, you know, even those really of us trying to keep up with it, gee whiz, there's so much going on, it's very hard to keep up. So anyways, he said, well, I gave him a couple responses here, and, you know, basically my thoughts are some of the things, just to give it in a nutshell. If you haven't been opposed to this, I'd say there are some really good people who need your help with this. And I speak specifically of Kerry Marks and Bob Patrici and Palikapu Deadman and many other people out there, you know, who are trying to do good and trying to fight these things. Jane Hedke, there's a lot of people all around here, and the Hunters Alliance, who know that what's going to happen to our lifestyle here on the Big Island if this PLDC and this collectivist, which is what we'll be going into with the Road to Serfdom approach, you know, top-down, you know, ruler-orientated approach, you know, damn the people, we know what's best for them, you don't. The individual does not know what's best for their destiny and their situation. The community does not know what's best for its situation and destiny. Only some brilliant Poindexter at a capital in Honolulu or Washington does, and their cronies. So anyways, I said there's some really good people, and they're going to be I'm just going to say it's screwed. Okay, I mean, our lifestyle on the Hawaii Big Island is going to be screwed, and this is not just about geothermal. And you know, the PLDC will be going into that in much more in depth in the near future. The main thing you need to know about the PLDC is, besides being corrupt, that the process was certainly corrupted, they can take and condemn private land, your land. Okay, and not only that, they could just not even take it and make you pay for improvements if they have any project near it. So this is not really a public land development. This is a land development period, as they see fit. And we'll be going into the details, but it is no over-exaggeration at all to say that they essentially have tried to create something where there's no feedback, no rule, and they'll just do as they please. It's up to a board of appointees. I don't believe we have any direct input or oversight of them at all. And I would suggest going back to, I had a show on, I believe it's the 924 show. We had a great show. Ted came on and he spoke about it. That was a gold edition, that one. We had a lot of good stuff. The mayor came on, also Harry Kim, and we went kind of through the geothermal and a little bit around the PEIS, which was a programmatic environmental impact study, and we addressed some of these things. But you get some great information, so if you have YouTube, please go back and view that show. It is well worth your time. We even have some funny stuff in there. The Grim Reaper came on. It's about 5 or 7 really knowledgeable, smart people, and they were giving you aspects of what's happening here that's very worthwhile to know. So going on with this, basically I said, you know something is bad when progressives, libertarians, some Democrats, and some Republicans, Green and Hawaiian sovereignty people all agree and are against it. This may be the most corrupt thing ever in our state. I certainly don't know the whole history, but I got to tell you, this one, you know, as they say, there's something rotten in the state of Hawaii. There is something rotten in the state of Hawaii. You know, it's, even if the intention was good, even if they intended this to be, and I got to tell you, when you sneak it through the way they did in a 3-day, you know, situation like that, it's kind of, you got to believe that they know something's up and they're trying to, you know, pull a fast one. But even if they intended it, this is totally circumventing the people's input and probably will. And, you know, that's really not the right way to be governing by and for the people, I would have to believe. So, basically, here's a bit from the Pono Alliance newsletter, Bob Patrici and all the people there put out. And I just like to say, keep in mind that this is probably primarily pure crony capitalism. And I understand, you know, the reasoning for some of these people. I mean, I'm sure there are actually some good intentions. They're trying to provide, they think, jobs and such as that, even though I think there's much more efficient. I think it can be proven, not just my opinion, readily, that there are much more efficient and productive ways to get us working than to do it this way, okay, through crony capitalism. So anyway, stripping the people of their land literally and resources with no local planning review, codes, etc. Just what Honolulu says it wants from hundreds of miles away. They can literally put it in your backyard and make you pay for it without even buying your property. It may be the most corrupt law ever passed in the U.S. Most of you have probably heard about the headline in last Sunday's paper talking about the coming push for more geothermal in Lower Puna. This is Bob and the Puna Pono Alliance speaking. They're definitely planning on coming just as we said they were, and we, the community, is all that is standing in their way. Up to 20 companies have leased or are trying to lease lands over Lower Puna, including Opihikau, Pohohiki, and Four Corners in Kapoho. And it's not just geothermal. They are planning hydrogen cracking plants and ammonia manufacturing and who knows what else. Now, I'd like to stop for a second. You think, oh, this sounds great. We could use the work and stuff here. Then here's the question. Would you like it in your backyard? Okay, is Hawaii, this state, an industrial state? Now, granted, I can see that it would be great to have some industry here, and I'm not against it. I'm all for business, and I think most of us are, but not in people's backyards. Okay, this is the thing. If this was put way up on Hualailai in the middle of nowhere, that'd be one thing. We are talking about dropping these into communities where people have come, saved much of their life, tried to buy a house and put it in. Think if this was in Hilo. Why isn't this going in Hilo? Hey, come on. Hilo's much more industrial. Let's put it near Helco down there and put it near the plant. I don't think they're going to try that because I think there'd be much too much outrage. Ammonia is very dangerous. Okay, the NH3 is obviously very explosive. And the concentrations and such that they're making it, it's potentially very toxic, lethal. Geothermal is not, as Harry Kim has said on our program. Go to the 924 program and listen. This is not the same geothermal that we have in Wyoming and Washington and California. This is a hot rot magma, hot hot rock magma, and it is potentially very devastating, especially, to those who are near it. I myself have breathed this, and, I am in the alternative energy business, and I'm certainly wishing and hoping everybody can develop and use good, clean energy, but this is not the one. And even if it was, you're now putting it into someone's backyard and really causing a harm to them that is not deserved. I mean, if the plant was fully there and all this was fully developed prior to them coming and it was zoned and set for that, then that's something else also. So continuing on with Bob's newsletter, we really need the community to stick with us on this if we're going to stop them. You guys have been great, and we have moved this discussion out of the dark closets and back rooms front and center where it belongs. Everyone needs to pay attention. This is real, and it's coming fast. We can and must stop this, or Puna will be forever changed. The sustainable, self-reliant farming community we have built will be changed into an industrial zone with all of the impacts that brings with it if we do not act. We can stop them, but it is going to take all of us working together. Please help. Come to our meeting and tell your friends and neighbors we need them also. And this is Puna Pono Alliance. Puna Pono Alliance, if you look them up on the web. They're great people, honest, decent people, and they are actually, the geothermal is what they're on at the moment, but their actual thing is sustainability and alternative energy. And I think the consensus there, and I know I've certainly heard Bob espouse it, is that, centralized energy is a thing of the past. We need to be generating it more and more locally, and I think what's probably really going on with a large part of the PLDC is to maintain a monopoly and an income source and the high rates, as Bob's saying. And, I'm not against Helco. I know that they benefit a lot of us, so again, I'm not against them, but putting a model that is certainly outdated with newer technologies is not productive. And if you go, without getting into this too much, because we have had these on many other shows, and please do watch the geothermal stuff, it's worth knowing. The geothermal, putting a plant on a zone 1 lava, okay, and building it and putting millions or billions of dollars down there, bypassing the safety codes and all these other things that they are able to do with the PLDC. That's not intelligent, and it's not good for our energy future either, because that's a very volatile area. It's not smart at all, and I'm sure it will not be cost effective at all by the time it's done. There are other ways to get jobs and get this economy working, instead of just inefficiently exploiting the resources and the people in that area. And that is, by the way, one of the words literally in the PLDC bill, which I started reading over today in depth, and we will get into and hopefully in the next few weeks. Now moving on to some national news of note. We're going to start out by an absolutely incredible story, another situation where bureaucrats want unlimited, unconstrained access to your money and to do with it as they see fit, essentially. This is Treasury Secretary Geithner lift debt limit to infinity. This is according to CNS News. Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner said Friday that Congress should stop placing legal limits on the amount of money the government can borrow and effectively lift the debt limit to infinity. We already, each working person in this country already, especially in this state, okay, because there's a very high, I think it's $140,000 per taxpayer in this state, we already owe, we're all millionaires, minus negative millionaires, negative $1.3 million. And they want more debt to infinity. I mean, this is incredible. You understand this is going to be printing money. This is what's going to happen, and or a collapse of the economy. Printing money thus means very high inflation. This is especially terrible. Okay, it's really effectively it's cruel to elderly people and young people and people on limited incomes, people struggling. This is very cruel to them because they have a hard enough time. I know myself. I've been hungry at times, and I haven't had it easy myself. And to make it more difficult for them to eat and to get by playing these games, okay, wasting money on ridiculous wars and many other things, it's really cruel, and it is certainly not serving the people, or certainly not serving the people who really need it the most. So we're going to move on to something else, which is another absolute atrocity in the making here. And this is according to CNET News. I'm sure it's all over. Senate bill, this was in the 1120. I downloaded this. But this is a Senate bill rewrite lets feds read your email without warrants. Let me say that again. Senate bill rewrite lets feds read your email without warrants. Proposed law scheduled for vote next week originally increased Americans' emails privacy. Then law enforcement complained. Now it increases government access to email and other digital files. Let's go into this just a bit. It says America's email privacy has been quietly rewritten, giving government agencies more surveillance power than they possess under current law. CNET has learned that Patrick Leahy, the influential Democratic chairman of the Senate Judiciary, comment, quick aside, very, very, very disappointing, Democrats. One of the few things, okay, that I personally, and I think a lot of us hope and wish that you would do, is protect our civil liberties. That's supposedly what you're for. That is just baloney now. You and the Republicans, these two parties together, are harassing the people and doing incredible things, and this is not shame. I mean, shameful. This is, you Democrats are losing your core. The Republicans have had it long gone, okay, and you too now. It is very disappointing. Anyway, so I vote on this bill, which now authorizes warrantless access to Americans' email, is scheduled for next week's. Grants warrantless access to Americans' electronic correspondence to over 22 federal agencies. Only a subpoena is required, not a search warrant signed by a judge based on probable cause. Permits state and local enforcement to warrantlessly access Americans' correspondence stored on systems not offered to the public, including university networks. Authorizes any law enforcement agency to access accounts without a warrant or subsequent court review if they claim emergency situations exist. Says providers shall notify law enforcement in advance of any plans to tell their customers so that they've been the target of a warrant, order of subpoena. I mean, here's the thing. If there is a legitimate situation, of course, get a subpoena and go for it. But, you know, just by human error and by chance, they're going to come across so much stuff that is going to be spurious and is going to be a waste of time, but is only going to subject people to incredible difficulty and perhaps embarrassing in other situations. Not necessarily because they were even doing anything bad. Sometimes people get in awkward situations, awkward moments, whatever. It's simply not their business. You know, who is perfect here? I would like to know. Things need to be worked out, and sometimes they need to be worked out in private to be, you know, made better. And having the government in on everything, I mean, this is just another step, as we will see on the road to serfdom when we get to that the Totalitarian Governments Institute, and this is something getting very close to or exceeding the Stasi, secret East German police. Okay, thanks to a submission from Gina. Thank you, Gina. You know who you are. We have bribery, fraud, and deception hurt you in more ways than one. This is a story. I'm not sure where the source was. It's about the lobbying by the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, which I've heard a bit about in the past. And in the past, what I'd heard, it's actually sound pretty benign and, you know, good and efficient for the lobbying, especially for conservative causes, you know, as it was basically, well, let's get into the story and let's see what it says. Unfortunately, all of this medical deception and at times outright fraud is a part and parcel of a much larger problem, the near unchecked system of corporate bribery that drives our political process. Please, collectivists, I know a lot of you mean well. Please understand this. This is something I think that you really could learn to understand, and it would really change your mind on a lot of stuff. The government, in most cases, is not there to help you. You may think they are. I have thought they are. They are not. They are there to protect and to keep and to benefit themselves. That is essentially the end. Any organization gets into that mode if they can do it. There's no competition for the government now. The duopoly is in on the same game. There's more agreed on that they never talk about than is disagreed on, which the few little differences they go over. This system is for them. And so when you get a, you know, heavy regulation in general, and I'm not saying that there aren't some things that need to be regulated, but a heavy regulation in general benefits those with the money to buy the people in power to basically, it's called barriers to entry. They will keep their opponents or competition out of the game and the industry they're in, and they will write things to benefit them. And I think you probably are seeing that in the utilities here in Hawaii and many other things where a limited monopoly is granted, and basically it is not for the people's benefit. And there are many things from the shipping on down. So anyways, this goes on. The pharmaceutical industry is the biggest political lobby in the U.S. I didn't know that, but I can believe it, and that probably explains why there's no legalization of marijuana, which I do not smoke, but I have seen people take it and relieve their pain, and I've seen them relieve their animals' pain with it. And this would be a tremendous savings instead of having to go to the doctor or the pharmaceutical and, paid. This is a perfect example of regulation in most cases being used to suppress the people and to basically funnel the money to the politicians and their cronies. So basically, we're going to continue on, but this is essentially, this is according to the legal papers filed with the IRS. Common Cause believes that ALEC, this is the American Legislative Exchange Council, which describes itself as a public-private partnership between member legislatures and business leaders. Basically, they're saying that at least one state, South Carolina, has written a special exemption for ALEC so that it can engage in a type of lobbying. And they keep going on. But basically what's happening here is we probably have corporations and those with money using this process to put model laws throughout the whole states, or as many as they can, to benefit themselves. And I have seen this done firsthand. I'm not going to name the company because overall that company was a fairly good company. But I have seen this done where they took a product and essentially made that product become a part of a standard, a model code. This is in the building industry. And they benefited tremendously from it. And in most cases, it really wasn't needed, or certainly wasn't needed to the degree that they claimed it was, and effectively made it to be used as much by the quote-unquote authorities enforcing the building codes. Final national story, and then in a moment we'll be getting into some other things, and primarily libertarians, and how they altered the races in the last national election in November. So Ron Paul, secession is a deeply American principle. And, a lot of people are freaking out about this, but he makes the point, and I'm just going to go into this, and I'll clearly admit it, I'm a big fan of Ron Paul. I think he's great. He's woke me up. I think his time is now past, especially with what happened with Rand, and, they came a little too close to the GOP for my taste, especially a obviously corrupt GOP, which we'll get into in a bit. But secession, if you think about it, we seceded from England. And I think secession, legally for sure, with Texas, I haven't looked at the exact law, but I believe from what I've seen, that's one of the conditions. They made it so they could get out of the Union pretty readily because they'd already had, Six Flags previously over them. So they were knowing that things don't always work out the way they want, and they left that option to get out. And if you have the option of secession, first off, it basically goes to me, which I believe the principle is, and I think it's a healthy principle for almost all institutions, beings, relationships, where you have a balance of force. So in other words, in this Constitution in our country, it was set to be balanced between the state and the federal government. So in other words, they were two equal partners. And what has clearly happened over the last 100 years, I would say, especially since Woodrow Wilson, preceded in large part by Teddy Roosevelt, the theoretical Republican/progressive. I guess he's one of the first ones that erred from the ways of the tradition back then. But they've been building it and making it more and more federally controlled. Now, even if you're for that, I certainly hope you recognize that anything imbalanced think about this. If you have a very top-heavy government, very distant from an area, let's say Hawaii, and they're dictating exactly what we're doing, but there's no feedback. Okay, in other words, if you look into systems, a batter, when he sees the ball coming to him, they have to adjust and take the feedback. The problem is the federal government is not really accepting the feedbacks. They're not making the adjustments to serve us well. And I know I'm not going to get into this argument because, there's aspects we could argue this day and night about the positives of both, but I think a balance is pretty critical, and we're losing that. And the point I'm trying to make here is that secession is something that states can use and say, hey, you're getting out of control here. This is way out of control, and at least in our particular state, we don't like it. And if we feel it's grievous enough, we'll take off. I don't believe there's anything at all treasonous about that. If you're defining these units, and smaller units in a state, it's not the United States. It's the United States. It's 50 states, with each one contributing to the whole, or possibly, and hopefully, if they feel abused, leaving from the whole. And this would be the same if whether it was Republican or Democrat. And by the way, Democrats in power now. Again, just to make clear on this, I basically implored people not to vote for Romney. I think the guy was an evil man in many ways. I think if I had to have the two, I'd rather have Obama. And I have actually some hope, okay, that things will be better. I think he may be wiser now, and hopefully things will get worked out. And, I'm sure deep down there somewhere, I'm sure he means well. I believe that, and hopefully he'll turn this for us. But the point is, if this was a Republican administration and you felt it was very abusive, or frankly they're both abusive, I believe, but things may need to be done to try to correct them. And if they don't respond and they just keep abusing the state and the citizens and their beliefs, then why shouldn't it be allowed? Are you, because essentially you're believing in slavery then. You're saying that we have the right to constrain these people and keep them in the Union. If that state and those people vote or wish to get out, and it's clear, then let them do it. Why not? It is the principle upon which this country was founded. So I say, secessionists and other, if you feel it's necessary, at least to bring the attention to your cause and to get some people to behave and listen to the feedback, go for it. We need it. And I know in Hawaii this is not likely to happen now, but guess what, Hawaii? This could be a Republican, very oppressive Republican administration in 4 years or 8 years if it comes to that. And, you might be liking those, situation also, including the ability to, as the original Hawaiians found here before the state was stolen from them and their independence was stolen by a greedy, plotting man and his cohorts. As you probably know if you've gone into this is an illegal occupation here. It really is. That, circumstances may change and you may wish your freedom, including the association even with other countries. The benefit and the truth is that all human beings need to be given an equal chance to listen, to have their feedback heard, and to be respected. And if we're being abused by a central authority thousands of miles away, then I say, and I believe, and I think a lot of us would be saying, that we should at least have the option to consider, and there's nothing unpatriotic about it. In fact, it would be foolish not to. What, are you going to sit there and be abused? I don't think so. All right, so now moving on to the promised Libertarian review and how it affected the Republicans and how it's going to keep affecting the Republicans. And I think it may be actually too late for them to ever recover. There's been too much that they've done, and if they don't get it together in an extreme hurry, and even then, I think it's probably still too late for them. And this is going to be good for the Democrats for a while until they really blow it. And which any party, nothing against the Democrats, any one monopolistic party staying in there too long, they're likely to lose their way, I believe, and it's going to be a problem for them. And the people are going to become really PO'd, and that'll be a new cycle beginning. So we're going to go over a few things. We're going to start off with an article from Breitbart, and this is GOP reaps its abandonment of limited government. In the wake of the GOP's election losses, media mavens and party elders inevitably expressed deep concern that the party has become too conservative to win elections. Blah, 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 blah. We can keep going on, but here's really what counts. Let's see where this came to bear. And this is not the full list, by the way. This is also only a partial list. It does not include the states where the victories were thrown from the Republicans. I believe it was 2 states. I think it was Colorado. And it was another fairly major one. I think it was about 35 votes. Maybe I'll be able to find that. 35 electoral votes. So anyways, they're saying here, Arizona 9, Democratic margin, Libertarian vote. Okay, Arizona 01. These are the House votes. Okay, so anyways, you can see that. And they go on to Libertarians can be a fickle lot, and are talking about all this and Obama's big problems. And, here's the problem. It's just like Romney. Wake up. It's not just the other guy. It is you, Republicans. It is you. When you cheat and steal and lie then during the process and disenfranchise people and ignore them, not even just the minority voters, not even just the women voters, your own supposed core voter, the entrepreneurs, the males, the white males. When you alienate them and piss them off amongst everybody else, you really got some problems, and you are going backwards, and you've done it. And I'm one of them. You've done it. I've had it. I'm telling you, I registered, I tried to buy the line, I couldn't. Too corrupt. I mean, it's pretty damn sad when you think the Democrats are more honest and more straightforward than the Republicans. And I can say this in truth, okay? For example, let's look at Linda Lingle here. Come on, give me a break. This woman was incompetent from the beginning. This woman and you're a conservative and you claim she's some kind of conservative. She brought Agenda 21 into this state. She is the enslaving force now that is going on in many things into our county. She brought these heinous, incredibly stupid, overspent building codes into this state.
was given up in the Federal Reserve Act. The Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express.
You try a hide and destroy a freedom, man. You sick agenda. We know you anti-American. You come forward American Constitution. 1913, corrupt in the system. Devalue dollar, hyperinflation. The Federal Reserve, controlled by Lucifer. He can see